Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That was a great speech there on skin in the game and what we can do by really breaking the monopoly on money. So I'm going to be speaking about Bitcoin, not blockchain. So just once we get the slideshow up. So just to sort of intro, one of the things that we're seeing right now is a lot of hype around blockchain. And I think it's really getting overhyped. So I'm going to try and bring that back to what I think the real value is and why. So the talk is Bitcoin, not blockchain. So it's being oversold. So you can see a lot of people talking about it, and it's a lot of people just going bright shiny thing, next bright shiny thing. Oh look, it's now AI and machine learning and so on. But really they haven't thought clearly enough about what is a blockchain and why would you use a blockchain. And really the real innovation, in my view, is Bitcoin. So I'm going to try and, this is a libertarian and mostly capitalist type audience. I'm going to appeal to your self-interest. What's in it for you? You can make a lot more money by getting into Bitcoin. Bitcoin could, obviously it could be zero as well, but there's a chance it can go to millions. And I'm going to show just a quick calculation on how it could go there. The other thing to consider is the market for money is so much bigger than the market for anything else because money is half of every transaction. So, what is global wealth in the world? It's around 280 trillion from this Credit Suisse report in 2017. How many Bitcoins have already been lost forever? Estimate is about 4 million. The total supply ever is about 21 million, and that will only be reached in the year 2140. So currently there are about 17 million coins out there, of which about 4 million are presumed to be lost. What does that give us as a calculated value? Well, total global wealth, 280 trillion, divided by 17 million BTC, assuming the full supply is out. And this is likely to be a winner-takes-most market. So 80% applying a power law gives you, in today's terms, a value per Bitcoin of 13 million. That is what we're playing for here. So there's a really prescient comment here by Mencius Moldbug, who mentioned in 2011, at the time Bitcoin was 90 cents. He basically made an analogy. It was like buying Manhattan for a quarter. So enter sound money. So I'm influenced by the School of Austrian Economics, and I believe the real innovation here is sound money. And to really understand that, we have to understand what Carl Menger, the founder of the Austrian school, wrote in his essay, The Origins of Money. And basically he's talking there about different assets compete on the market to become money. The one that is most saleable, the one that is best at storing your value through time and space, has a tendency to win out over other monies. So it's not that we're going to enter this multi-coin world of having bread coin and milk coin and denta coin and whatever. It's really more like there will be one best money that everyone will coalesce onto. And how we'll get there is by looking at the monetary attributes. So this is a nice little comparison of Bitcoin versus gold versus fiat. And you can see there, it doesn't win out on every single metric, but it's the most scarce and it has the most credible monetary policy. And that is what makes Bitcoin so much different and so much better than every other money. It is the hardest and most sound money we've ever had. So this graph is perfection. So this graph is the total money supply graphed out over time, showing that it's on an asymptote. And what this does is because it's credibly scarce, it means people are more willing to store their value in this thing over the long term. So let's compare fiat versus gold versus Bitcoin. So you can see in that top table, the average inflation rate or growth rate for gold, 1.7. The average rate for US dollar, 5.5. And I think the Australian dollar would be roughly similar as well. So what you can see is at the start, Bitcoin had a very high inflation rate in the first few years, but now, in this second table below, you can see now in the year 2018, we're at an annual growth rate of just under 4%. But once we hit the next Bitcoin halving, block reward halving, the inflation rate will go below that of gold. making it superior from a value storage point of view. This is the first time we've ever been able to have this level of scarcity, because anything else, if you've read Julian Simon and if you understand whatever is in this world that we try to get, if we apply enough human effort, we can get more of it. We can find more oil reserves, we can find more gold, we can go mine gold in the asteroids and so on, but we can never get more than 21 million bitcoins. It's been made that way through cryptography. And that really is the crucial innovation here. So you've got to think of it from a stock to flow ratio. And so the argument that we would make is that for thousands of years, gold had the best stock to flow ratio because it was so scarce and because it hardly ever gets destroyed. So it had the highest stock to flow ratio, meaning the amount of new supply of gold is so limited. But look what's happening with Bitcoin from the year 2025. It is going to massively eclipse anything else in terms of stock to flow ratio, meaning it will be the most marketable. It will be the thing that people would want to store their value in. So, sort of bringing it back to the blockchain point, the reason we use a blockchain is that it's a very specific technology that enables censorship resistance. If you don't need censorship resistance, you likely don't need a blockchain. So what I believe we're seeing is a lot of people selling it up about this blockchain for trade finance and blockchain in the corporate sphere and so on, but they're sort of doing like cargo cult reasoning. It's like these people who think that just by recreating one piece of that, but not recognizing the overarching reason why that it was built that way, or why this technology was built in such a specific way, they're just trying to sort of claim the benefits without recognizing what actually gave it that benefit. So in order for Bitcoin to succeed, it has to avoid what gold failed at, which was it got centralized. It got co-opted by governments. Because gold is stored in vaults, it was easier for governments to go and exert control over those vaults and such change the way that we would trade. But with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a game changer in that sense because it enables anyone to store their Bitcoins in their own vault, in their own private wallet, where they control the keys and they may verify and send out their own transactions. So, blockchain hype. So you can see there's a little Dilbert cartoon and he's talking about, well, how's blockchain going to influence our strategy across all our product lines? And you're getting all this talk of, I recommend the purple blockchain. It's got faster CPU, guys. So, but here's the reality, right? Blockchains are just overhyped linked lists. There's not necessarily a need for everyone to store every possible copy of the transaction and validate every transaction unless you've got a very certain specific need for censorship resistance, as I was mentioning before. So here are some of the problems. So as I was mentioning, it is a very specific technology. It's designed to be government resistant. That is the key sort of point here. And that is why with Bitcoin and the blockchain, everyone stores every block, which is a set of transactions. But if you were to try and implement blockchain into a corporate environment somewhere, you're just massively increasing the cost to transmit, validate, and store all that data. Now you've got to store it on, say, 10,000 different nodes instead of once or twice once in a primary location and maybe a few backups. And there's additional difficulty in updating and maintaining this sort of software as it has to be backwards compatible. It's hard enough to scale in a centralized system. Imagine how much more difficult it is to try and scale in a decentralized system without a token that incentivizes people to actually mine and run Bitcoin software, which is another thing with Bitcoin. And lastly, many blockchain technology solutions, so you hear people marketing things like, oh, well, you could verify that this diamond on every level of its supply chain was not using slavery or so on, but you're still trusting whoever put that record into that database. You've still got the problem of garbage in, garbage out. So there's a lot of kind of talk about, oh, it removes trust, but does it really? I think I'd be a bit more skeptical on that. So Yes, there are a few examples that you might have seen on the news. So ASX settlement and HSBC have talked about trade finance, and you hear about various examples here and there. But I think ultimately, many of these examples probably could have been done cheaper without a blockchain. And really, the gain probably just came because they were using some kind of legacy software that just wasn't using modern technology of databases and backups and access management, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's basically the point there. Now, they could use cryptography, and they could use some other kind of public key cryptography or give you a receipt and design their system and architect it, engineer it in such a way that they don't need a blockchain, but they can achieve a similar result much, much cheaper. So your personal alternatives. Well, at a personal level, buying and holding Bitcoin has returned something ridiculous, like 400 or 500% return over the last 4 or 5 years on average. And from a libertarian standpoint, Bitcoin adoption will do much more to limit government spending and wars, because the sad reality is governments have funded their spending through inflation. And by use of Bitcoin, you are sort of removing that monetary control from the government, and thus the government would actually have to provide you value, or it would massively decrease or disappear. And we would use other mechanisms to do what we currently have government now for. So the conclusion: history shows it is not possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of others holding money that is harder than yours. So I'll just leave you with that. And if anyone's interested, you can check out my blog or my Twitter @Stefan Livera. Thanks, guys.